Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Hi, how you doing?
All right, all right. Are you ready for me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Good afternoon to the listening audience. This is Georgia F. Allen with GA for Justice. And I want to welcome you to our weekly conversation for information, a conversation for correction, and a conversation for transformation. We also would like to thank Henderson Vaughn, our producer, engineer, owner, who provides us with an opportunity to share information about the best of the 757 every Thursday at 12 noon,
Ooh.
right here on WVDM Radio Show. And so today our topic is politics, progress, and power. And we have a very, very special guest, Mr. Ryan Jackson. He is a veteran of politics. Ain't that a handsome young man that we're looking at now?
Hey, I ain't gonna
in
comment on that.
Virginia. In Virginia. He currently serves as the campaign manager for Aaron Rouse for Virginia State Senate. He previously has served in various leadership positions, including political director for Governor Terry McAuliffe and deputy political director for Senator Mark Warner and a senior advisor for Congressman Robert Bobby Scott. In his free time, Ryan volunteers with the Hampton Roads Committee of 200 Plus Men, also Finney Smith Foundation, which many of you may have attended this past weekend, and Virginia Beach Democratic Committee. He is a graduate of Hampton University, and while we're on the South Side, we won't hold it against him that he went to Hampton University.
Hey.
Ryan lives here in Virginia Beach with his beautiful wife, Miss Brianna. So, with that being said, we want to welcome Ryan Jackson.
Welcome. Thank you for having me, Georgia. It's great to be here.
You are welcome.
And I won't hold anything. I will always behold the green and gold. My grandmother went to Norfolk State University, so I would not be here without her education at Norfolk State. So.
Yeah, of course, the South Side always like to have that little, what is it, fight with the peninsula, but it's always in good measure. It's never a mean thing. It's And so for those of us who are on the South Side, whether we went to Norfolk State or not, we will always behold the green and the gold. So I'm excited to have you up here today, especially it's political season. And in Virginia, it is always political season. There's never a time where we're not doing something in politics, a new election, or, in this case, someone passed away and we had to bring on somebody new to our city council. So there is always something happening in politics. So we're glad to have you here. And we, of course, want to just talk to you a little bit about politics in general, and then politics a little more specifically. Yeah. In general, we know that politics is a process where a few people in charge make rules and regulations for the masses, okay? It determines the distribution of resources, and basically it will determine who will be making the decisions on our behalf. And so when we vote, it is critically important that we look at politics from a standpoint of a small group of people that have the power to press the button yes or no in favor of what we want or against what we want. So that's just a brief message about politics. So kind of share with us today what's going on with you, what's happening in the world of politics, and why it's so important that people get involved and that they vote.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me again, Georgia. I think it's, vitally important for people to get involved. Currently, right now, I am managing Aaron Rouse's state senate campaign, and also another young gentleman's campaign to be the next mayor of Newport News, Philip Jones. And kind of how I got started or involved in politics. I was a Hampton University student back in 2012. I had the great chance it was election year. It's always an election year in Virginia. Michelle Obama came to Hampton University, and I just came and learned information, got involved with the Obama campaign back then, and made a couple phone calls, but never really dove into it. I think my first full-time commitment to getting involved was working with Congressman Bobby Scott, who has been a representative and represented us well for a long time now. So I interned with him. Senator Mamie Locke was my professor at Hampton University, and she connected me with an internship to work with Congressman Scott. And ever since that time, I've been involved, been helping folks get elected. Winning some races, lose some, every now and then, but you learn a lot either way. So I think like you said, it's about an allocation of resources. Really, politics. We have 100 members of the House of Delegates, 40 senators, and those 140 senators introduce legislation that affect about 8.5 million people here in the Commonwealth. And when we wonder why, resources aren't allocated to certain communities, or why things are the way they are, you voted, you have elected representatives that represent you, and that push those issues that you are passionate about. So it really is, like I said, a small amount of people that make really decisions that impact their life, and some people aren't even aware. So I'm excited to be lending my voice and doing what I can to make sure those issues are at the top of people's minds and get addressed properly.
And I appreciate you saying that. One of the things that a lot of people don't quite understand is that the state legislature allocate funds that go into the communities, but it's the city council that determines what community those resources actually go into. So when people think that the most important election in their life is, let me press that button for president of the United States, they forget that state legislatures have the power of the purse to allocate funds. Those funds then come down to your local government, and then you have to take a look at your local city council members, your mayor, and find out, are they representing?
Take a hard look at your mayor and city council. Take a hard look.
Yes. So kind of tell people a little bit more about that, because again, I said I'm here for information, for correction, and for transformation. And I stand on that every week that I sit before this audience.
Yeah, so like exactly as you said, we have a session. The General Assembly goes in a session, either it's a short session or a long session, in about 30 to 45 days, give or take. And then sometimes they reconvene to vote on they do reconvene to vote on the budget about how those items will be allocated. But in that short session, with a small amount of people, they determine a lot about what will be allocated from our budget, and how that will directly affect you. But I would say too, definitely, and I think we might get into it about especially our city council here in Virginia Beach. I think a lot of your viewers probably live in the city of Virginia Beach, but that money is allocated to the local government, and those representatives do a lot to determine how those funds get allotted. So when you look around and you wonder why some places are more developed or have better roads or sewage or trash is handled, that's all your local government. So you really need to take a look at that and be active in that process, especially the budget process for your city. Get your request in, and so forth. But that's where the rubber really meets the road, and where you can hold those members more accountable. You probably will. Most members would never see the president. Citizens will never see the president in their lifetime, but you can go right down to City Hall and see your elected city council and mayor. So it's always, I think your voice, Georgia, we have to hold people accountable one way or the other. Yeah, you've agreed with some of my candidates, you haven't agreed with others, but either way, you held them all accountable. So we'll leave that alone. But please don't go there. But definitely the local is, it's where the rubber hits the road, and I hope we talk about. I know about voting rights, especially with something you've been passionate about, and something we've even worked on to make sure we have the representation Because if you haven't noticed, we had a recent redistricting here in the city of Virginia Beach, in which we are luckily going to a 10-1 system. But we have to be vigilant in making sure we, we keep the progress we
Maintain,
made. Yeah.
maintain. And that's so important because a lot of times people say they feel like the civil rights activists, or they feel like community activists, or they feel like in some cases their ministers are out there fighting. And so therefore they can just fold up their arms and just wait for
Yeah.
things to work out on their behalf. But they forget that numbers mean something. So even if there's one person out there making noise on your behalf, you coming out and standing with that one person or two or five or seven people that are standing up, when the city council see you showing up at the city council meeting and there are 500 people there regarding that same situation, that has a major impact. So we have to continue to educate our community on how important it is for them to stand up for their concerns and their issues and not rely on one person to do it by
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Mhm. So you're absolutely right. We're from day one, we are in a fight. And for some reason, people thought they could just sit down and rest on the laurels of what,
Yeah.
our forefathers did. But actually, you are still in that fight right now.
Yeah, and I think it's an onus on us to the next generation to, like I said, remain vigilant and, if not move it further, maintain the progress that we built upon. The status quo, is always looking to keep it the status quo. They especially when progress is accomplished, there's always a backlash. So we have to remain vigilant, even here in our city, and we could probably get into it further. We just went to a 10-1 system. And then we recently, I think just last month, the court made a decision in regards to the city of Virginia Beach's appeal, in which they, sided with the city of Virginia Beach, and a lot of those folks are the status quo, and we have a strong minority population here that we have to make sure is, represented equitably. So, even when we look at our city, we both live in District 4, for example, and we wanted to make sure that we had a school board candidate that ran in that seat, regardless of if it was our who we thought it may be. We had to have somebody that ran because we fought hard for this for this district system. We can't just concede it, after fighting and not be represented at the school board level, where a lot of decisions are made on your children's education, that will have lasting impacts. The education you receive from early childhood to elementary to middle and high school it has an effect on public safety, where you will be in life. So to not have our voice at the school board level, combating some of the nonsense, that sometimes takes place from different sides, is vitally important.
Absolutely. And with that being said, keep in mind that we may not always have a candidate from our community, but if we have a candidate that represents our interests, that
Hmm.
is equally as important as having someone that is a person who
Yeah.
looks just like us.
I,
So,
I I think it's sometimes, maybe even more advantageous,
mhm,
because we can hold them accountable in some ways in which, they say skin folk isn't always kinfolk, in which we can even hold them more accountable to make sure when we come with an issue, whether it be the NAACP or Virginia Beach ministers or so forth, we're coming with a strong, coordinated voice to say, this is where the community stands. So,
right. And another thing that I want to say to our community, it behooves us to list our agenda items and then check them off as they are resolved. Because a lot of times you hear, especially on the national level, well, what is Washington doing? And the president isn't doing anything, and Congress isn't doing anything, and Senate isn't doing anything, etc. but they haven't gone down the list of items that have been accomplished. And so their voices are loud in talking about what they have not seen accomplished versus talking loud about the things that have been accomplished, which creates confusion because now folks who are not as actively involved in the political process walk away with the assumption that nothing got accomplished. and then they're deciding, well, should I vote? If nothing is getting accomplished, should I vote? Well, if you're dismissing yourself and your people who are working on your behalf, you haven't done yourself any good. I tell people all the time, there are two parties. And just like the one party might currently have the majority in the House and even Stephen in the Senate, you still have to hold both parties accountable. Because if the House passes everything that the people have asked them to pass and it dies in the Senate, then you need to look over there at the Senate and find out who helped that bill to die. And you can't just talk about the one party. You have to talk about all those 100 senators that are sitting there because they too had their power to vote yes or no on the issue that we, the people, are concerned about. And I think that has been a big failure on the part of national to inform the American people that when they passed the infrastructure bill, who were the names of the people that didn't sign on that infrastructure bill that are now running on that infrastructure bill about how many jobs they created in the state of Idaho, even though both of their senators
they had all the ribbon cuttings and the celebrations and stuff.
And so I think it behooves the political party to make sure that the American people know that, yes, we did pass the bill, but these are all the people that voted against your son or your daughter getting access to those dollars to get a job. So they weren't helping you at all. It passed, but not because they voted for it. And so I think that's really critical. I was just looking at another bill where 41 Republicans, and this is a more nonpartisan show, but I do have to call out people when I feel that they're not working on behalf of all of us. And so I know I have family members that are veterans. I'm sure that you probably have members of your family, or maybe you've even served in the military. But there were 41 Republicans that voted against the vets bill. 41 that voted against the vets bill. But those are the same people who say that they are pro-veterans. They're the same people that said they're pro the folks in blue, but they operated on January 6th and were dismissive of police officers dying. So some of those things I think is critically important from a standpoint of politics. I mean, you don't have to use politics in the negative, but you need to tell the truth. Okay. That, to me, is not being negative. That's just telling people truth. And so as a citizen, those are my concerns, that I'm not hearing people speak to those issues enough. I hear them say, well, should so-and-so run again for president? Why don't you ask, should those people that are sitting in the Senate, should they get reelected? I think that's a much, much better question. Should they be reelected? Should the people in Congress who raised their fists one minute in support of the insurrection but was running for their life, another film, you should be saying, should that guy get reelected? And I don't hear that. And so those, and I'm speaking from the community standpoint. It's my show with Mr. Vaughn, but I'm talking to you from the standpoint of what people are saying. Why don't we hear from the party that, the dude that held up his fist also took off running? And yes, we see it in some ads, but we just feel like it should be louder because we know if it was the other side in charge, they would run that ad every which way. It'd be on every Twitter feed, every Facebook feed, every Instagram, every TikTok, everywhere you look, you would not be able to look anywhere. And even when you sign on your computer in the morning, the first thing that will pop up in your face is somebody running for their life, and there would be a little note on the bottom saying the guy that's running also supported the insurrection.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you will, especially as we move into these final. I think we're 98 or 97 days from election day. I think you'll definitely see more ads and material that will speak to that on the TV and digital media. But I think just from the grassroots level in the community, in which is a space that we really operate, is I think there is sometimes a disconnect in the message getting from DC or from the Richmond, even sometimes, to the community, saying about the work that has been done when it comes in regards to. And I think sometimes the misinformation and disinformation is easier to it meets people where they're at, on Facebook or Instagram or so forth. So there was something, for example, talking about Biden was cutting HBCU funding, which was not true, but it was coming from messengers such as that we listen to and digest, like World Star Hip Hop and Baller Alert. That's where our where we reside at. So when to the contrary, Biden and Democrats, however you want to cut it, has done record investment in our HBCUs. Since the pandemic has begun, they've received more money than they've ever received in their history. So I think where my job comes into and where I step in is really meeting the people where they are, so they can get the message about what's going on. I know, like, we both been in the same barbershop, talking about what's going on, and that was in a primary of 1 year, and he was supporting my candidate because I met him where he was at, and the others did not. So I think meeting people where they at, and then we have to have trusted messengers in the community that we communicate consistently with, and let them know about what's going on. So hey, this is what's been going on for HBCUs. This is how much has Norfolk State University has received in the last 2 years, under a Democratic administration, and so forth. So I think getting the message out to trusted messengers, but really meeting people where they're at. If the young, folks, I'm young myself, I'm 28 years old, so I don't want to say young folks. Yeah. So, but if they're at the club and origami or or whatever club it may be, meet them where they're at and let them know what's going. If at the barber shop, everybody got to get a haircut. Really meet people where they're at. Have to empower the barbers to, whoever business leaders to know what's going on and give them a one pager. This is these are 10 things we've done. So so when you talk to somebody, you know our accomplishments and know what we're staying and know what we're fighting for.
And that is critically important. Again, this is Georgia Allen with GA4 Justice. And I have a special guest, Mr. Ryan Jackson, who's a political operative, mostly campaign managers and supporting candidates. And he was right. Sometimes I agree with the candidates he supports, sometimes I don't. But guess what? That's what's called a democracy.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are out there and saying, well, why don't you guys agree on everything? No, we are not monolithic. And that just really gets on my nerves that somehow they think that all Black people think just alike. No, the last I checked, we weren't on robots, and you didn't press the button and all of us walked in the same direction. Okay. So good evening, Michelle. Thank you for listening to us today. So tell us a little bit about some of the progress that we have made, that the elected officials have made in working on behalf of the things that our community is concerned about. Anything from criminal justice, and this could be on a state level, it could be on a national level, or it could be on a local level that you have found that has been beneficial to us.
Yeah, I think something I'm passionate about is historically Black colleges and universities. So like I mentioned, from the federal level, they've received a lot of funding, but the COVID relief bills that have come out, I think, in the tune of tens of millions of dollars, both Hampton and Norfolk State University and Virginia State University here in our Commonwealth. I think at the local level, in which people really need to pay attention to, especially if you live in, I think most people live in Virginia Beach. We just got, the step plan where all city employees get a $15, minimum wage, and bring those, bring equity to the pay scales. And I think that was championed by, Aaron Rouse. So I'll give a slight plug there.
Mhm.
But then at the state level, I know we have had a turnover from the governor going from a Democrat to a Republican, but we really have to look and see what was championed by Democrats during that time. It was the legalization of marijuana. Medicaid was expanded in our Commonwealth, with affected hundreds of thousands of folks. When we talk about criminal justice legislation, lowering the felony threshold here in Virginia, if you were still in an iPhone, which is common, or an expensive pair of shoes, you were being charged with a felony, which has a lot more severe implications than a misdemeanor. So, really looking at that, even you could go on and on about the things that have however you side with whatever party.
Mhm.
There were some things that were happening under the past administration that are not happening now. Look at the amplification of critical race theory and these divisive issues, and so forth. So you really have to analyze, I think, really at the local level, because that money can get moved and shifted a lot of different ways at the local level. Look to see which areas have been developed. I think, and I go back to Aaron, because that's, he's one of probably 3 Democrats on city council right now. If you look at, it's something simple, but it means a lot. Champion a basketball court in Friendship Village community. That may not seem like a lot, but that costs money. I think it's a tune of $300,000. Like, somebody had to advocate and make a commitment that children have an activity and something to do there. And I know who it was championed by, and I know who it was not championed by, and what interests, folks championed for, on the city council. So I think really just looking, and a lot of accomplishments have been made, but like I said, we have to communicate that to folks.
Absolutely. And what I'm hearing is, yes, there have been accomplishments, but I like to see a slick, a handout where one side says these people voted for this, and then just a little blurb at the bottom of how it impacts you, and then these people voted against it. I can remember when the Affordable Care came out, and folks tried to do everything they could to make it look like it was a horrible situation. At the around the time that it came out, I was in a late I got laid off. I was with Verizon, and Verizon was relocating a lot of their offices to more or less hubs. And so, of course, when you get laid off, the first thing you do is look at COBRA prices. Well, I looked at the COBRA prices. If I were to go with COBRA, and that's the insurance that you get for your health care when you are in a layoff status, or just left a position, either layoff, or if you just decided to quit your job, you do have an opportunity to sign up for COBRA. So when I went online to look up COBRA and how much it was going to cost me, it was somewhere around $300 and some per week. Okay, mind you, when you work for a company, they're paying a lot of that, so your insurance costs are very low or moderate low.
Yeah.
So my friend who worked in the financial services industry, I called her up and I says, "Hey, I'm in layoff status. What does the Affordable Care have to offer?" My insurance with Affordable Care became somewhere between $120 some per month to $170. It was somewhere in that range, but it did not go to $200, because that I remember. I was like, wow, it's not even $200 for the whole entire month. But COBRA, keeping the same plan that I had with Verizon, would have been somewhere around $300 per week.
So
wow.
Huh? I said, wow.
When people say, well, affordable care didn't do anything, I'm a witness, okay? And I can stand on the Affordable Care Act. I've heard other people say, well, I worked directly with Blue Cross or Blue Shield, and my insurance was this amount. And then when the Affordable Care came out, my insurance went up. I said, well, did you call a financial advisor?
Yeah.
Well, no, I didn't. I said, well, why don't you do that? And then let's see if there is a difference. Because sometimes we don't have access to certain information. All different businesses, folks have access to things that we as individuals do not. And so sometimes we get bogged down with thinking that the insurance may have gone up when in fact you just didn't go to the right person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is another part here where holding your elected officials accountable. If there's ever a matter that it touches the federal government, whether it be like IRS or Social Security or a passport, call your congressman. They represent you. They can help you navigate some of that the bureaucracy to help you. If it's a matter you have at the state level, call your delegate, call your state senator. They can help you navigate that local level. If a park they haven't cut the bushes, call a department. I think sometimes we have not because we ask not.
Absolutely.
And there are people that you vote for them, you pay their salary. Hold them, they can help you out. So.
And the other thing that people need to understand is there are all type of professionals out here throughout the whole time of the Affordable Care Act. Even now, from time to time, you'll see a pop-up event that said, come down and sign up. And they walk you through the process, but they also walk you through costs.
Yeah.
And all. And so if you see that pop-up and you sit at home, but you're mad, you need to be angry with yourself because you didn't go and gain access to resources that are available.
Yeah.
It's not
there are so many resources out here that people don't take advantage of. And even if you talk about the value and the importance of the ACA, for myself and young people, it allowed us to extend on our parents' plan up until age 26. So I never had cared about, not cared about, I cared about it, but it wasn't a concern or a worry or a burden because I was still allowed to stay on my parents' plan up until age 26. So it's just so much that legislation affects you by, and then, when people try to take it away, then you realize how important and how much it affects you on a day-to-day basis.
And that's an 8-year difference. Because normally insurance stopped on your children at age 18. As soon as they turn 18, insurance stopped. They stopped at your company if you were, insuring your children through the company, or even if you were doing it on an individual policy, that policy stopped at age 18, and then you had to re-register as an adult. And so look at the millions of dollars that parents, family members saved because there was 8 more years that their child could be covered under a lower amount policy. So that information did not get out there the way that it should have, so that people could understand the value that they were receiving, because that's real financial value. If your parents had to pick you up as an individual college student paying insurance, once you turn 18, you of course would have to have the health check, and you would have to go through all of that to determine what you qualify for. If you had weight issues, it helped determine whether your policy was this amount or whether it was this amount. So being able to stay on your parents' policy, that's tremendous.
Yeah.
Absolutely tremendous. So next we want to, and I know this is not you, but I did want to mention the Supreme Court. How would you suggest the American people go out and champion the cause to increase the number of people on the Supreme Court? I'm gonna listen to what you have to share. Um,
So I think the American, and I think this is something that, I know this isn't partisan, but it's just a matter of fact that the Republicans pay a lot more attention to building a bench, having a list of their names, the criteria that they want folks to vote for, how they want them to vote. When it comes to judges, it's that it has not been something that's been institutionalized as much on the Democratic side, and even understanding the process. So, appointing people from the Senate to the Supreme Court. So, if you want to have any effect on how the Supreme Court, whether you want it to be expanded or you think, how justices are important, you need to talk to your state senate. I mean, not your state, your federal senators. So here in Virginia, we have Senator Warner, and we have Senator Tim Kaine. I think you have to pay attention to the appeals courts that come before them. There's a feeder court that goes into the Supreme Court, in which a lot of people get on that court before they go to the Supreme Court. So that's the DC court. Like, you have to pay attention. It's not sexy. It's not the number one thing, but like you paying attention to how those justices are appointed. Is something that we just have to do better of, and then the Republicans just start, have made it a litmus test of, like, you will not move forward until you vote XYZ. So that's why you had a majority on the Supreme Court that agreed to basically overturn Roe v. Wade, which was the set precedent for 50 years. So, like we said at the beginning, every time we progress, the status quo and wants to take us back. So in this case they took us back 50 years, and send it back to the state legislature. So I think if you want to have any effect, or you're mad about the Supreme Court, what's done is done. Those justices we have, they have life appointments. They will be on that court, and most until the day they die. Um, so I think you be vigilant about how these structures work in the feeder system into them, and making sure that uh, your senators are appointing people, justices, in line, because they recommend names to the president for appointment. So it's not the sexiest thing about following Judge so and so from Henrico County, but it's important.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I think that there's an issue that we as a people, because courts affect our community a lot on every level. We are affected by the court system probably more than anybody else, because a lot of our young people, they go before the juvenile domestic court, then they go before the circuit court, and so they're constantly in the judicial system, and that very seldom up to the Supreme Court. They don't go up that far, but the issues that the Supreme Court looks at affects our children on a more
But if you're just now paying attention to the Supreme Court, you are
right.
late.
Exactly.
You're late. So
You're absolutely late. And so hopefully folks who are listening to us today, we're trying to give you some nuggets. Okay. We can't give you all the information in a 1 hour show, but hopefully some of the information that we're providing to you will help you to go back out to your friends, to your family, to understand that voting is not just for the presidency of the United States. Voting is about your local representation, your state representation, and your national representation. And if you don't ensure that you have a strong, united front, that's what the opposition has. They have a strong
they
united
they they,
front.
they are strong,
They they
united on a
they
message.
walk the line. I mean, those suckers will jump off the bridge if
Yeah,
somebody told them to jump off the
yeah.
bridge.
And so and I want to say, I know we're getting close to time.
Hmm.
I say especially stay vigilant at the local level. A
Hmm.
lot of what you are experiencing or wondering why it's not the way it should be in a different area of the community is based on stuff and investments at the local level. Right now, and for example, we have a problem, not we had with minority representation at the local level. I think historically there's only been 4 or 5 African Americans or minorities that have represented us. I think 4 African Americans, 1 Asian American. And we had a case, Latasha Holloway versus Georgia Allen versus the city of Virginia Beach, in which we made progress, and Judge Jackson said this was not fair process. The city of Virginia Beach appealed that decision, and then just last month, as we said, they didn't rule on the merits. They ruled it was moot because the Commonwealth of Virginia passed House Bill, I think 2198, or it was a bill saying basically the hybrid at-large system was unfair. So now we are at the point where we can take our progress. We have a 10-1. We have 10 districts. Please, if you don't know your district, find your district number out. I live in District 4 off of Baker Road. But now we have 10 districts, and that city council from those 10 districts will represent you the next time this is to be decided. But this fight, like we said, is not done yet. We cannot get complacent. We vote for Obama, we get complacent. We can't get complacent. We have to vote those 10 people in, because they will see if we move forward with this regular 10-1 election, or if we change to an all-at-large system in which people are voting. And the problem with the at-large system is people from Pungo were voting on who would represent minorities community in College Park and Lake Edwards. They don't have the vested interest that we have. They don't go to the same elementary school. They don't drive on the same roads. I was telling Georgia, they're not getting off at these highway exits. That's construction is busy fairways. Like, why are they voting on who will represent our interests? So and that's just a power thing, in which it becomes more expensive to run at large, and the let's just keep it fair. So it's a white majority that's voting on everybody instead of the minority community who lives there. So if you don't leave away with one thing, it's vote in these November elections at the city council level and school board level, and Congress too. And but there's so much at stake, and people didn't pay attention to who the mayor was until Pharrell left with something in the water. It's not. That's important. It's not just that, but they are people who are making decisions, and we wonder why we're not the city we could be. So.
Absolutely, and you make some excellent points, and that gets to power. You got folks up there that can influence how things work. You got folks up there who claim they're going to vote your way, change their mind, and you get a totally different outcome. And so we need to make sure that we have the right people in power, in position to ensure that the way they vote is in our best interest.
Yeah.
And with regards to the 10-1 district, again, when you're able to run in a district, it is nowhere near as expensive, especially when a district is about 48,000 residents. But
you can probably knock on half of your district. You can knock on everybody's door. You cannot knock on everybody's door.
You can probably knock on everybody's door now, because how many people had to move in with each other because of gouging at the gas tank, of gouging in the grocery store, of gouging in our different areas. So when people say there's inflation, no, there's gouging. And I have been on this from day one, is because I've been out here so long. I recognize when powerful people make that shift to increase their revenue, to increase their profit, when they really have to. And so we also have to remind our people that don't believe all of this stuff that is coming out to you, whether it's coming out on your social media network, or whether it's coming out on your local station, or even your national news. Because when the prices started to go up, none of the media said, wait a minute, I did my research. How many of those people that sit behind the desk said that they did research on what the oil companies were paying in 2008 and what the oil companies are paying now. How many of them did that research? No, they immediately said there's inflation. I mean,
Biden, Biden did it,
yeah, they immediately said it was
Yeah.
inflation. They didn't bother to say, wait a minute, this makes no sense. If they're paying the same amount and they have made all of this money over these years, they obviously got quite a bit of money sitting on their balance sheets. So therefore, tell me, why do they need to go up this much in their price other than to gouge? And then when you look back and you saw that they were buying back their own stocks, they were buying their own stocks, so they now made money 2 and 3 times. So I just want my listening audience to hear, so that they can go out and give people correct information and not misinformation, not disinformation, but correct information.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I do have to leave, so I got to pick up my
Okay.
wife, Georgia. But just, I mean,
Could you do a closeout? Can you share a few final?
I will. Even during this conversation, we were talking about judgeships. Just during this conversation, Biden announced his pick for a Norfolk judgeship would be Judge Jamar Walker, who would be the first openly gay federal judge. So, and he will replace Judge Jackson, who made the decision in the Virginia Beach case. So I would say this is all connected, and the stuff is coming at you fast. If you're late, you're late. Decisions are being made on your behalf that you're not even aware of. So my onus to anyone listening would be to get involved, find out who represents you, find out what organizations you're passionate about, and support those organizations, and support those elected officials who are advocating on your behalf. Because sometimes when you're on the side of right, it is very lonely, and we need to support those who are supporting us. So get involved.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for coming. Excited to have you. We're going to have to bring you back as we get closer to election time. And vote, vote, vote.
Vote, vote, vote. All right.
All right.
Always
Take
good to see
care.
you,
Bye-bye.
George.
Okay. You just heard from Ryan Jackson. Again, he is working with the Aaron Rouse campaign. Aaron is leaving city council to run for state legislature, and that's the Senate seat. And so we need to make sure that we have people who are going to champion the causes of our community. It's not enough to elect people to office if they're not going to champion the things that we care about, if they're not going to champion causes for our children, if they're not going to champion causes for criminal justice. He mentioned that the state legislature changed the ruling with regards to what becomes a felony. So instead of saying that a pair of tennis shoes that are worth $200 is now a felony, they've decided to move that down to make that a misdemeanor. That means that is tremendous, because a felony means you lose your right to vote. A misdemeanor does not. So these are the type of things that you need to be clear on when you are deciding who you're going to vote for. Okay. And I'm not going to suggest which political party you're going to vote for. I'm more interested in which person you vote for who is going to work on your behalf. On our city council right now, we have 11 people, which includes the mayor. And there's only 3 people who 90% of the time fight for the things that we care about that are important to us. Sabrina Wooten, Aaron Rouse, and Guy Tower have 90% of the time voted on the behalf of what our community cared about. When we were looking for a disparity study, others came in and finally supported it, but they didn't champion it. So understand the difference between somebody finally, getting knocked in the head and the community going out and pushing and pushing and pushing, and someone who goes forward and says, this is what the community wants. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to champion and be out in the forefront to champion that cause. because we need champions. We don't need people who sit there and have to be prod and pushed and knocked over to champion the causes of people who have been disenfranchised. Yes, Michelle, we are much stronger together. And it is critically important that we understand that. I think where we lost our way, and this has been quite a number of years, because keep in mind, we were not part of the processes. We were not part of the lawmaking. We didn't put the potatoes and the carrots and all of that in the stew pot. The stew was made, and then we were having to live with the stew, and then we were trying to redo that stew. Okay, when we saw that a lot of the decisions that had been made were not good, we had to start looking at what we had to take out of that pot. And so right now, what we need to do is we need to get our young people involved. Michelle, I don't know if you're interested in running for office, but we need candidates. If you're not interested in office, we need people to learn about running for office. There's a organization called the Sourcing Institute, and they have weekend courses that you can take. They also have a year-long course that you can take. But that weekend course is a lot less expensive. It goes through every piece of a candidate process, from everything from fundraising to get out the vote campaign to registering people to vote. All of these pieces that help you to win elections, they talk about that. And so it is critically important that we get people engaged in the entire process, instead of just saying, oh wow, I don't want to do that. Running for office may not be for you, but you might make a great campaign manager. You might make a good fundraiser, or you may be great at doing the accounting or being a treasurer. But all of those things are necessary. And we need to get our young people actively involved and be aware of the various parties that are out here, and make sure that we're talking to both sides. I try to talk to both sides until they make me angry. I do try to talk to both sides, but when someone comes to me and says that the election was stolen, when we know that we know of two elections that were stolen, I believe that was in 2000 and 2004, that were actually stolen, where the Supreme Court can decide who's going to be elected to office, even though one person has the majority of the votes. And in both of those elections, the people that had the majority of the people's votes did not get to be the president of the United States. That concerns me. Okay. And I'll tell you, both parties I have issues with. And Henderson knows me. I'm equally as hard on the Dems as I am on the Republican. Yeah. The difference is one party has decided before they ever get sworn into office that they're going to vote no on everything. Why am I paying you to go up to Washington, D.C. when you have already decided in advance that you're not going to look at a policy, you're not going to read the legislation, you're not going to do anything, you're not going to help write a piece of legislation, you're not going to do anything other than vote no? So if I have not been actively, I would love to have some independent people to come up here, and all. But I'll be honest with you, I have a real problem with somebody deciding in advance, when they know what their salary is going to be, when they know what their benefits are going to be, and people are hungry. They are hungry. People are homeless on the street. That galls me. And so until I can see them going out and actually listening to what people have to say and actually saying, you know what, I will not walk the plank. I will listen to the constituency and I will vote in favor of things that I feel is in the best interest of the American people. So that's kind of where I am right now. If I can find someone who I feel is genuine, who genuinely care, and maybe won't agree with me, I don't mind you not agreeing with me. What I mind is you deciding in advance that you're going to do absolutely nothing and take my tax dollars to pay your salary, send your children to college, and do all of that. And you say in advance, no, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to go there and I'm going to sit. I'm going to complain. I'm going to criticize. I'm going to demean. I'm going to lie, which is the other thing that just galls me. I'm going to come before you and straight out lie to you, as in the case where one of the people who was in office lied about the congresswoman down in Florida, and they were called out on it, and they stayed with the lie. So these are the type of things that kind of drives me to do what I do. And not trying to be unfair to anybody, but when I can find someone that I strongly feel will at least have an honest conversation with me and is not someone who makes their decisions in advance and refuse to listen to the people, then I can bring them on. But I would like to find some independent people to come on the show. So with that being said, I thank you all for your feedback. This is GA for Justice. Again, I'm always interested in a conversation for information, a conversation for correction, even when I have to correct myself, and a conversation for transformation. It's GA for Justice every Thursday at 12 noon. Come and join us. Thank you again, Henderson Vaughn, for opening up your lines to us so that we're able to get a message out to the community. And have a wonderful day, everybody.
All right. There you have it from GA for Justice, your host, Georgia Allen, former president of the NAACP in Virginia Beach. Until next Thursday at 12 until 1. We'll see you then. And don't forget to share this with other people on your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter accounts. Until next Thursday at 12. Bye-bye.